Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Kemetic Fortitude on the Clarke Vision 2020 Network. Today it brings me great pleasure to introduce this guest. This man has more decorations than a float during a Rose Bowl parade, more bars on his jacket than Bourbon Street does during Mardi Gras. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Shon Neyland.
All right, nice to meet you,
Thank
Clarke.
you,
See you with you.
All right, Dr. Shon Neyland.
Yes.
So, I understand you were in the Air Force.
Yes.
You went in as a logistics management specialist.
That's right. 1984, I went in as a logistics management specialist. My job was to take care of freight traffic. Then I moved to personnel. I would ship emergency parts for aircraft all over the world, from a place called RAF Chicksands, electronic parts, aircraft parts, etc., receiving parts, etc. It was a great learning experience. Eventually I moved to the personnel, so when people would move, I had to book them on flights.
Okay.
I had to do that paperwork. Then I had to do household goods paperwork. So when a person would be actually what we call PCS, permanent change of station, then I would do all the paperwork for them to get their household goods picked up, all their house material picked up by a carrier, a moving company. And so I did that. And then finally, the last thing I did in the 6 years of logistics management specialist, I got an associate's in logistics management specialist, but the last thing that I did was the combat readiness, where I had to get the, when we were going to war, so you had to put special placards on trucks. You had to learn how to build pallets, which are called pallets of cargo pallets. These huge pallets, say 12 feet by 12 feet, almost big as a room, and you put cargo on it. So I used to teach people how to build those, and I myself learned how to become a load planner, which is how do you put certain items, weights of cargo, equipment for war on a plane. So yeah, it was an interesting 6 years, and I just kept learning and expanding, all from working in a warehouse, driving a forklift, moving cargo around, all the way up to getting ready for war. It's kind of interesting.
Wow. Well, you know, I mentioned the bars on his jacket. This brother kind of shattered the glass ceiling when it comes to climbing ranks.
Yeah.
What rank were you?
Well, I started off with 1 stripe, enlisted as an airman. And I moved all the way up to staff sergeant, 4 stripes, as an enlisted person in 4.5 years. By 5.5 years, I was testing for 5 stripes, which is like really unheard of. I was moving fast. But then I got my bachelor's in industrial technology and engineering. Okay. And so that allowed me to go to what's called a second lieutenant. So I went to second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel.
Wow.
All the way up there. So it's, yeah, from 1 stripe to eagles.
You see that, ladies and gentlemen?
It's possible.
It is possible.
But now that takes hard work and dedication and commitment to what you're doing. Commitment to learning the skill set, studying hard, working hard. And I'll tell you, the attitude is what people ask me all the time. How did you do that? It was positive attitude, believing in who you were, never letting the melanin in your DNA or any of that limit you in your capability, maximizing who you were, believing in yourself. And in fact, in most of my jobs, and this is not to be boastful, but in most of my jobs, I was at the top. I was a top performer no matter what position I was in. Whether I was a command chaplain, which is where I ended up, whether I was in missile and launch space operations, or satellite operations, or OTS flight commander, logistics management, every step of the way, I believe the Lord blessed me to be at the top of my group, in my serving capacity.
So you just basically followed the path of divine order and found yourself in another role. And you mentioned chaplain.
Yes.
Was that, if my homework and my mind served me correctly, 1990?
1999.
1999.
1991. I was commissioned in 1990, or started the commissioning process by 91. It was a 4-month process for us. October to February 91, I graduated from officer training school, went into missiles, space operations type stuff, launching nuclear missiles around the globe.
Wow.
I didn't get to do it though. That was my job. I'm glad I didn't get to do it. Had I launched the nuclear weapons, you and I would not be having a conversation today.
Right. Well, I'm glad.
Because first of all, I would have been targeted and taken out. Well, my job, we knew if we went to war that those who, you know, were what we call combat ready, we knew that we were targeted. And during the Cold War era, and this was right as the Cold War was ending, but I knew my job would cause me to lose my life in defense of the nation. And see, that's what service is about there, Clarke. It is knowing, being a warfighter, is knowing all those warfighters. I want to thank you, all those veterans who may be tuning in. Thanks for what you've done, because we know freedom is not free. No, America is not perfect at all, but we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. So thanks for what you do. But it takes knowing your neck, if you will, is on the line. Your body is at risk for damage, and your livelihood as you know it could be snuffed out in a minute. So when I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the bombs are coming in around me at any time, I could have died, but the Lord preserved me.
Well, you know, I want to thank you personally for your service to our country and giving us the right to do things like we're doing today, having an open discussion.
Yes.
So this gentleman here is a man of many hats.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that you're retired from the Air Force, we know that you were a chaplain. So now I understand that you are senior pastor at Highland Church.
Yes, I am now the senior pastor at Highland Christian Center, and we invite all the listening audience, if you live in the Portland greater area, come on down to 7600 Gleason Street, 9 and 11 a.m. every Sunday. You won't miss it. You won't be disappointed, and you don't want to miss it. We're growing. A lot of people coming out. We had almost 600 people in attendance last week. It was our friends and relatives and associate day, and so what a great day, just sharing in our faith. But here's the big thing about Highland. You think it's internally focused, but it's not. It's external focused. We feed over 130 people every week. 130. Check this out. These are people who sleep on the streets, who have no clothes. We give some of them showers. We give them clothes. We give them food. All right, now we're starting up a veterans ministry outreach specifically designed to take those veterans, because I'm a veteran, who have served our nation, and take them out, take them off the streets if we can, hook them up with the VA and the resources, the Veterans Administration, and get them the proper help. So that we're hoping to launch that ministry. So again, we have the food bank, we have breakfast. People can come on Fridays and they can just come and line up and get food. And you don't have to be living on the street. But let's say you're struggling. Let's just say you're struggling as a family. You're hitting a tough time. You can come to the church every Friday morning at 10. We don't ask questions. We give you food. So come out to Highland Christian Center. Our theme for this year is building community and changing lives. So the church needs to go outside of the walls. The church needs to be involved in the community, helping those who are hurting and those who are in need. Not just in word and not just singing songs, but in a practical, real, meaningful way.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And also understand that I know I've seen you on YouTube. I subscribe to his YouTube channel.
Yes.
He has his own website.
Yes.
Talk for a moment about that. And,
yes. Relationships.
Relationships.
Yes.
I forgot to mention this man has written a few books.
Yes, 4 books in fact. One was my doctorate work. I have 7 degrees, and I wrote my first one dealing with how to reach military, younger crowd. The second one was Devotions from the Desert. So that's when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan. I used to send out these daily devotions. People were so excited about it. So I wrote a book. I took those devotions as is, authentic, and as my thoughts were in the middle of war, and I put that in print form. Then the third one, which I'm so proud of too, is called Loving When You Don't Feel Like It. So my wife and I collaborated a little bit on that, and it's called, it's dealing with unconditional love. How can I love through the toughest time? See, the reason, not the only reason, but most divorces happen at the early stages is because we don't recognize that we have faults and the other person have faults. We want each other to be perfect, which we cannot be.
Right.
And so when you don't forgive, when you don't look beyond those faults, you grow, dissonance grows in, and you'll keep growing apart. So by 4 or 5 years, all right, why are we doing this? We're just roommates. Let's call it quit. We're not physically intimate. We're not spiritually intimate, socially intimate. We're not emotionally intimate. We don't have any intimacy. Let's just call it quits. Well, if you have unconditional love, it can counter the growing apart, because unconditional love causes both people to look beyond the faults of the other and work together on that relationship. So when there's an argument, there's a disagreement, you and your wife, or my wife and myself, we can look beyond those faults. We can say, hey, this is what I would like, but I forgive you. I'm going to still do the right thing, even if you didn't do the right thing. Now imagine if two people said that to each other. I'm going to do the right thing no matter what. And that's the problem that happens in most relationships. We are reciprocal. I will love you if you love me. I will show you kindness if you show me kindness. But that's never going to work right, because eventually people are going to mess up and make mistakes because we're human. And so if we recognize that and just love unconditionally. So I built the book on 1 Corinthians 13, love is kind. Love is patient. Love is trustworthy. Love builds up, doesn't tear down. Love doesn't hurt. So there's 15 characteristics of what love is. So I unpacked it in a book. It's about 160 pages.
Wow.
So the fourth book, though, Clarke, is the one I'm most excited about, because it speaks to today. Oh, we have the divide in America. We have rhetoric from the White House, rhetoric from Congress, and all across our nation. The language is divisive. It pushes us apart. And I believe we should be one. Now, how can we be one? Only if I can look at you and you can look at me as a human being. Now, the president put out a quote today. He called the people of Baltimore, he says it's a rat-infested kind of environment. I want to say, I think it says rat, but I'm not, you don't quote me on a rat, but it says infested. I know that was a big word.
Right, I did see that.
And boy, the host on CNN got all emotional,
right,
because that was his hometown.
Right.
And then when you use this word infested, it's a divide. It's another word to say you know, in the old days before the civil rights movement in the 60s and the 50s, led by Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and all the great leaders. But we had William Du Bois in the 1920s and all of that. But let me tell you, the language was perversive. That you and I, because of the melanin in our DNA, were not human. See? So when you say infested, rats, dog, animals, it's a undercurrent word, right, to use or to intimate less than human.
Yeah.
Infested, less than human.
Right. And
so that's what I'm sorry those words were used this weekend for whatever reason against Elijah Cummings, the House of Representatives member there in Baltimore district. And I think that's what, there's a war of words going on between the president and Elijah Cummings, but why bring in the people and use infested? Right. And so if you go back in the early 1900s or the late 1800s and even the 1700s, if you had melanin in your DNA, if you were African, Hispanic, you were considered low as a dog and you were considered like an animal. We did not have voting rights, as you know.
Right.
And then the Supreme Court voted that we were 2/3 human. 2/3.
Right.
So we weren't even fully human. And that's what I'm saying. And so if you that's how all this ties together for me, at least in my mind, my career and all of that. Because when I went to the military, I did not look at myself as subhuman. I looked at myself equal with every person, whether you were Hispanic descent, Asian descent, European descent, and those are my words. So I don't use the term black and white purposely. And people catch on when they hang out around me, because when you use the term black and white, what it does is it creates this picture, does it not, of opposites, right? Black and white, the yin and the yang. Think about everything you know. Think about this for a second. Everything you know about black and white is the opposite. Devil food cake is black. Angel's food cake is white. You go to the doctor's office, they're wearing a white lab coat or a white coat at the dentist's office. But when you see black, I'm wearing black today, but when you see black, you think gothic, or you think evil, or you think, I mean, these are the kind, you think bad, right? You think the bad. I remember in the NBA, when teams started wearing the black, everybody said, oh, they got their black on today. You know, they're going to be tough. And then the old cowboy movies, you remember those? You and I were watching. The black hat was the bad guy, the white hat, and then if you're riding the white horse, and all of this, you know, had elements of good and evil. Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. When Darth Vader, his father, was on the dark side, he was wearing all black. Luke was wearing all white in episode 1. Now, I didn't realize it until I started putting the book together. But go to episode 3. By episode 3, Luke is wearing black, because he's this close to becoming dark, evil.
Okay.
So that's why he's wearing all black in Return of the Jedi.
Wow, see, little subtle that Hollywood still puts in.
And they still put out it, and they're using more and more, I hate to say this, but it's true, they're using the N-word. So the N-word is one of my pet peeves too, and that I think we should not call ourselves that in rap music. I speak out against it. I'm telling you, I know you like listening to the beat and the rhythm and what the heart of the city and the pain and the struggle, but you don't have to call yourself an N. And so now in movies they slip it in. And so I went to the gym that you and I work out in, and so I'm first time I'm moving to Portland to take over Highland Christian Center 2 months ago. I'm in the class. I'm the only person of African descent in there. Okay, but the music, oh my goodness.
Oh, so they were just playing unedited.
Oh, my unedited version.
Oh, okay.
In this, F the N, and the N, the N, the N, the N, this N. And I told the guy, I said, and he said, oh, I'm sorry. I know. So I said, so if I was not there, hear this out here in listening audience. This is what that music is doing across our continent and across the world. So if I were not there, you just got a whole bunch of people from Asian, European descent listening to us call us the N-word and enjoying it. And that is true. Oh yeah, they're like, oh, we like that hard. That's just one of them told me, and they didn't mean any harm. I don't take this offense. They said, oh, that's just their genre. That's just their culture. That's just how they communicate. They don't mean anything by. I'm like, so this is the mindset we've built across America. I was in Sweden, I was in Poland, and these 2 Swedish guys came up to me, Clarke, no joke, and they said to me, hey, what's up? You know, and they start talking. You guys are from America, right? America.